So as we look at automation and what it means, it's kind of interesting going from the panel and not taking, my entire talk track as we look at this. The first thing, this isn't going to be a deep technical pitch on automation and the underlying components. There's a lot of tools that are available to continue the education front. I heard that up earlier. To really look at how automation can help your environment. The one thing in my role at Broadcom within the Brocade division, I have a lot of access to our customers, and every time we go in to talk about automation, just the brainstorming that happens within the organizations that we work on a daily basis, whether it's the storage team, the networking team, kind of the back-end IT infrastructure, they sit in the room and just brainstorm on problem areas that they have today, and then we work with them directly to look at the areas that we can improve it through automation as we continue to look forward in their environment. And one thing with statistics, this really helps us focus on where we want to develop and spend our time when it comes back to automation. And I kind of highlighted a little bit of this during the panel. But if half of our time is spent on provisioning, troubleshooting, and initial switch deployment, that's probably an area we want to look at optimization for our customers to drastically reduce the amount of steps that it's going to take for them to spend on those activities. Because the less time they're spending there, the more time they're going to have on further education, learning new aspects of the business to become more valuable as an employee to that organization versus always doing the same 30 or 40 tasks every day when they come to the office. And from an employment, we want to continue to challenge our employees, and one way is to continue to let them grow and focus on other aspects. As I mentioned earlier on the errors, and I think a lot of the panelists today, as we look at the amount of errors that happen, and a lot of them go back down into, mundane kind of trivial tasks that happen, but it happens because they're so used to doing the tasks on a daily basis that they slowly kind of get a little bit lazy at sometimes and maybe shortcut because they know the process so well, but all of a sudden they skip 5 to 7 or something in the process. And you can kind of think about two big buckets when you look at some of the problems and how we want to help achieve them. And again, it's looking at the simplistic, the tasks that are done or the mundane ones. But then also from automation, we're really focusing on some of the advanced tasks that our customers are doing, where it's usually only one individual within the organization that can do that task. Because what happens if it's a maintenance window and they're sick, or they move on to another role or another position, and how do we look at taking what they were doing, and it's very time consuming, and these tasks usually end up touching multiple different components, which I'll talk about from a use case perspective. And as you heard today, IT organizations, they're getting more complex. And I don't think complexity is always a bad thing, but I think unmanaged complexity is a problem. So being able to manage the complexity and, again, put the tools in place to help solve some of those issues as they continue to go forward. When we look at the different functionalities from our toolkit around automation, REST APIs is pretty much the standard now as you communicate downstream into your infrastructure, from storage arrays to the networking to the hypervisor to the compute platforms. Everybody supports REST APIs. And this is where we can start taking advantage of doing this end-to-end automation. So it's not looking at it from a siloed IT approach. It's what we look at from a networking to a storage to a computer hypervisor, and really understand the environment end to end. And as you heard earlier with the movement to Flash and NVMe, being able to get better data or better information on your workloads as you look at different tiers or classification of storage, being able to get this in a real-time manner so the data is important and it's real-time to help you make better business decisions or technology decisions as you continue to move forward on where you should be placing your applications, what type of architecture within that environment. And then the last thing is I would like to highlight a little bit on the reporting side. So again, as I mentioned in the panel, the more reporting that you can provide to the users that data makes the most sense to, helps on a multiple facets so they can improve their process for automation around the application front. But then it also helps different parts of the IT organization look at their different types of automation to take advantage of. And by reporting the data that we see, and again, into the framework that our customers want to utilize, or really that orchestration framework, providing that data in that tool set, whether it's downstream in the storage platforms or some higher level orchestration within the IT organization. So when we look at use cases, this is where our customers really are gravitating towards. They all have some type of DevOps team within their organization. They all have programmers at some level within their organization. And when we start talking use cases, they start pulling in other aspects of their IT organization to start saying, these are our problems. Can you help us solve this through some type of open dev programmable application? And today I want to focus on 3 of our use cases. We wrote these. They're posted up on an open source GitHub community repository. And what I like to say with these use cases is any customer can pull them down. They're probably 80 to 90% deployable in your environment today. Slight modification to kind of make it your own for your own environment and your own need. But we kind of package what we think is kind of the best use case. And these were all driven through our end user customers. And then we kind of did the packaging of them together. I mentioned this during the panel session, and every customer that I go talk to, they have their spreadsheets and they have their data for data kind of management of where their devices are and so forth. And when you look at this particular spreadsheet, there's a lot of information. And our customers today, if you're storage administrators, one cell by cell, you have to go in either through a GUI or a command line and do this configuration. And these are the type of tasks that eventually, if you mistype something or you use the wrong address in the wrong location, you're going to have devices communicating with each other that shouldn't be, which is obviously a security concern. So you want to simplify and take those tasks out of the hands of humans and be able to do it on the back end through an automated way. And this also allows other non-storage experts within your organization utilize this, because the storage teams are going to put the information into the template or the spreadsheet, but another organization can take over and essentially add it to their playbook or their workflow and do the automation in the corresponding time. And we have a video of this out on our YouTube channel that kind of walks through the process and the steps, and very simplistic. In this particular example, it was our customer that every time they brought in a new storage array or bought a new servers, they had to go manually do all the zoning configuration. And every time they brought in a new storage array, it was 500 zones and members and so forth to communicate with each other. So again, what took hours to do now literally takes 30 seconds, and they're already doing the work in the spreadsheet. So it just helps streamline the process, quicker deployment, slower maintenance windows that they have to have within their particular environment. One use case that I think is really fascinating for a lot of our storage customers is they're already doing the configuration on the storage array to get the host or the application to communicate to the storage. All that information is already on the storage array. To do that communication, kind of the last step then is to go back to the network and do the configuration on the network. Well, in this use case, through the RESTful APIs of our storage arrays or our partners, we're able to go read the storage array, gather all that information off the storage array, which is already configured, from what applications can see what from a storage aspect. We look at it, we gather it, we structure it in a format that we're now able to take that information, and this is all happening automatically behind the scenes. We can run optimization against that to look at the devices and the communication, provide a report, or we have the ability to take that data and automatically push it to the fabric. So before, where I showed you the template to push it to the fabric to have the communication, now we have the ability to read the storage array, create the structure to automatically create and push it back to the fabric without any touching of the fiber channel infrastructure. So when we look at things to help simplify tasks, these are the things with our partners and really the orchestration tool sets it's getting us down into what I like to call zero-touch SANs, but more cloud-like attributes as well, where you can go to a single front-end web page and do a lot of the configuration work or the troubleshooting aspects to be able to push this information into the network. And again, this happens seamlessly. Takes a couple minutes to read the storage array, create the structure, and push it to the fabric within your particular environment. The other interesting component, especially for environments that are a lot of remote locations or areas where they do a lot of deployments, they want consistency with their switch provisioning. So this is up front. And a lot of organizations, multiple people have access, or they have multiple teams that can do the configuration, or they do different parts of the configuration. But a lot of our customers, they run anywhere up to 100 to 150 commands when they go provision a switch for deployment. And some of them have them scripted today, but a lot of them it's still manual. And it's very time consuming. And again, if you skip a step, which happens, now that switch potentially is out of compliance. So by creating an automated process or really application around this, you can have consistency with your provisioning. Everything is part of that kind of template or package. And then it guarantees, compliance and consistency across the initial setup of these environments, which again, as you start adding different role-based access controls and authentication methods, you want to make sure you're consistent, especially if you're sending it to a remote location where you might not have feet on the ground all the time to go do the troubleshooting on site, especially at dark locations and so forth. So another nice thing with the switch provisioning, and now we can start taking snapshots as they go into production through automation. So if anything starts drifting or anomalies start happening, we have the gold standard from initial deployment. But if somebody gets in there and starts modifying a setting or a configuration parameter, we now can do the comparison of those particular files. And you can run this once a day, every hour, weekly, depending on your organization. And it'll tell you or flag you anything that's drifted from what it should be. And this could be users that maybe fat-fingered a command or but potentially would open up a vulnerability on that network itself. So this will help maintain that consistency as you continue to move forward. As I mentioned, we have a ton of examples out on our GitHub location. Anybody that's a programmer or kind of the DevOps side of your organizations will understand how to do a pull command or a git command to go get this information. So we're going to continue to put additional use cases out there. We have a whole other set of what we call PyFOS as our utilities, which are, again, those starting to help our customers that don't want to do an end-to-end program. They might just want to take advantage of one of the utilities. But again, everything's located out there for your organizations to start taking advantage of. And then lastly, out in the Broadcom table outside, we do have some of our books. So as you start looking at how does automation from a storage aspect within my environment, what does it look like? This is a great book wrote by a colleague on within my organization that gets into a little bit deeper technical discussion, but it's an easy read. So when you start having these discussions internally, and the development team starts talking about Yang models and URIs and what does this mean, well, luckily this book gives you kind of the introduction to understand their verbiage or their language of what the programmers or the DevOps organization, kind of the mindset that they go through when they think about automation. This ties it back into what it means from a storage aspect within that particular environment. So we have the books out there. If you Google it, you can get a soft copy of the book as well. A nice, easy read as you start looking at what does automation do, again, for more of an infrastructure perspective. That's all I had. Thank you again. I know we've talked a lot of automation today. hopefully you continue this drive to do automation in your environment. It's kind of interesting reading the board over there, making things simpler, reducing the workload. The nice thing is that we're getting to that point, and a lot of nice use cases to start taking advantage of some of that stuff as you continue to look forward to your storage and your networking within your environment. So thank you.